Hi, welcome to my channel. I love to upcycle and make wearable art, functional art out of thrifted and discarded items. I'm going to show you how to make these fringe tote bags with absolutely no sewing at all, and they're just from shirts from Goodwill. I have this little black one also. How cute is that? I got a top that had some bling on it, some wings on the back. Just a little tote bag for shopping or throwing in your car if you have extra things that don't fit in your purse. I did this tutorial on TikTok one time with different bags. I got such a great response. I had a mom that said she was going to take her school-age girls and they were going to go to Goodwill and spend the afternoon looking for fun shirts and making these together, making memories. I just love that. So we're going to be starting with this shirt, and a couple things you want to remember when picking out your shirt to make these purses is you want it to be a knit or a jersey, and basically that just means like a t-shirt material because they don't fray, and we're going to cut strips and we don't want them to be getting little fuzzies all over you. The other thing you want to look for is some shirts, when you open up the inside, they're white inside. And you want the color to be pretty much all the way through, or a deep color, because white just looks weird when you have your fringe all done and one side's white and one side's color. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a V shape or a U shape in the collar. This one already has a V shape, but the back does not, and I want the back to match the front, so I'm just going to cut my own V. And then the next thing I'm going to do is this has a wide band at the bottom, and I'm going to cut that band off. Now I'm going to cut the sleeves off. You can do this two ways. If you have a needle and thread and you don't mind doing a couple little stitches, you can cut, there's a seam right here. And if you don't mind doing a couple little stitches, you can go inside the seam towards the shirt and cut sort of a bigger hole right there. But then you're cutting through the seam and you'll just have to do a couple little stitches right here. I'm going to do that and I'll show you. But if you don't want to do any sort of little stitching or anything at all, go outside this seam. Because if you cut outside this seam, you're not cutting any weight-bearing seams or anything that will come apart. And then you won't have to do any stitching at all. But I'm going to go on the inside. And, you know, I went maybe a couple inches below the armpit. And I'm going to do that on both sides. So now I'm going to take a needle and thread, and I'm going to put a couple little stitches right here, and right here at these little seams, so these seams don't come apart. But if you cut on the opposite side of your sleeve, you shouldn't have to do that. Now I'm going to take a big bowl, and I'm going to put it down the center of my shirt. All I want to do is clear this design. I don't want to cut into this design. So I'm going to stop my bowl right there. And of course the bowl isn't big enough to go all the way to the sides, but it kind of gives me a guideline of where I want to cut, because I want to cut a U shape into this. I don't want it to just be straight across fringe. I want to do a cute U shape. So I'm going to start about right here. And I'm going to come down to my bowl and kind of go around my bowl and just finish up on the opposite side. Just trying to match that up a little bit. So this will give us our guideline for when we're cutting fringe. So now we have a nice little U shape. Now it's time to cut the fringe. I'm going to turn this way so it's easier for me to work on. You just want to make sure your bottom pieces are lined up. And we're going to cut through both sides of the fabric. And I am just going to cut 1 inch wide pieces of fringe. So I'm going to cut all the way up to that chalk line that I drew earlier. And then I'm just going to keep cutting 1 inch strips of fabric. And I'm cutting both sides, of course. Okay, now I have my strips all cut. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to tug on these to make them longer. If it's a good knit material like a t-shirt, these stretch out. And so, see, I cut 1 inch pieces, but they stretch to a thin, fun little fringe. And I am just going to tug on all those until I reach the other end. Okay, so now that I have my fringe into the nice long skinny pieces, I'm going to start tying them. You know, this is kind of like those fleece blankets, how you cut the strips and then you tie them, if you've ever made one of those. And what I'm going to do is just grab the top and the bottom and double knot it. And then I'm going to go to the next two, top and bottom, and double knot it. Sorry, but picture sideways. It's easier for me to work if I turn it this way. I hope you can get a good view of. Okay, I'm going to do one more and then I'll turn the camera off and finish it. Then I'll show you what the next step is. And so I'm going to double knot that. Okay, now I have all my little fringes tied, and I'm going to give this a tug because it gets kind of small and puckered at the bottom from doing that. But all you have to do is stretch it back out. Now, at this point, there, in between these knots, there are tiny little gaps. So what I'm going to do is take the strand from my first cut and then a strand from my second cut on the bottom. So I'll take the top of the first, the bottom of the second, and tie that into a double knot. And then I'll go to the next strand on my top, grab one from the bottom, and double knot that. That way we're crossing it over, and that fills those little gaps. Strand from the top, a strand from the bottom on the next one over. Okay, I'm going to do that all the way over, and I'll show you what that looks like. Now I have all those knots tied. I'm going to give it another stretch. How fun is that? I just quickly wanted to show you this other top that I'm going to make a tote out of. What I liked about this, it's that knit material, like feels like a kind of a t-shirty material. And I love the boho pattern. So I'm going to make one of these too, and we'll see how that turns out. these little flowers in the stash of my stuff, and they have little pins on the back. They're little brooches or whatever. I think I'm going to pin one on this bag. You know, the sky is the limit. Be creative. Some brooches or just about anything, you know, that you want. Be creative.